Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you about this very worthy cause, and your nonprofit is dedicated to work with. I'm very excited to introduce my public, my audience, to you and to your organization. Welcome to God Size Stories.
Thank you, Patricia. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here today.
Thank you. Well, let's just get right to the heart of what you do. Water for good, right? So, Dave, take us back to the beginning. What first stirred your heart for the global water crisis?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most of my career has actually been in the for-profit sector. In Chicago, I worked for large companies, small companies, Kraft, PwC. I started a consulting firm. But the whole time I was doing that, I was working closely with my church as we developed partnerships with different organizations. And one of the interesting things we did was at that time, we were looking at, I was the missions director. And so it was uh, church budgets grow so slowly. And so one of the things we looked at was how could we partner with nonprofits, Christian nonprofits, in a bigger way? Like, could we raise a significant amount of money outside the church budget through our congregation? And then instead of a smaller gift, could we do a larger gift? Could we do a $50,000 or $100,000 gift to help somebody over that next hurdle? And we called it Serve the World. And despite the fact that we were in the midst of launching a new campus, a pastoral transition, and a name change, church leadership agreed to it. And so we were able to raise a significant amount. I think it was close to $1 million.
Wow.
And then we wanted to then talk to partners. So I had some time. I was getting out of a business that I was in, and so I spent time doing due diligence on the organization. So I got to spend some time traveling around, meeting amazing people, doing amazing work. I thought I was an entrepreneur until I went to northern Nigeria and I saw what a couple was doing on a shoestring budget to change the lives for people there.
Wow.
And so I met the folks from Life Water at that time in Uganda. And I was so impressed with the holistic approach. First of all, I was shocked by the need.
Mm-hmm.
696 million people lack basic access to water.
Crazy.
Women walk 200 million hours a day to get water. And often it's terrible water. It's from a pond, it's the same place the animals are drinking. And I was so moved by that and also inspired by the holistic approach that historic Life Water did. And by the way, Life Water and Water for Good merged. And so I came along with the Life Water side.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so impressed with not just with the work they did, but the way they did it, very holistic, and really looking at walking alongside communities, going house to house. And so we became partners, our church and Life Water at the time. A few years later, I joined the board of Life Water, so I got to have a deeper dive into it. And then um, at some point in there, I was offered to come work at Life Water, which I did. And I've been with now Life Water and Water for Good for the past 7 years.
Yeah, Life Waters was well established. I've heard the name before. I did not know that it had merged with Water for Good. So you guys have a good footing in this field, right? In this mission field, because they've been doing this mission for many years, right? Life Water.
Yes, Life Water, when we merged the two organizations, Historic Life Water had been working for 47 years
Yeah.
in the sector, and Historic Water for Good had been working for 21 years. So both had been working. And the beautiful thing there is we set aside all of the lesser idols that we have as organizations and said, if we put these two groups together, could we serve more people? Could we do it at a lower cost point?
Mm.
And could we grow at a faster pace to be able to serve more people in the future? And so each organization had some wonderful people, some wonderful assets and strengths that they had, and they were complementary. And
Yeah.
so, if you look at historical life water, a lot of focus had been spent on culture, having a culture that's thriving, having technology enabled folks. So no matter how remote you are, you can do a survey on how valued you feel, what equipment you need, how engaged you are. You can jump in on any project. And so LifeWater had really gone into that space to say, hey, let's really create a really good, strong operating system
Mm-hmm.
and a proven methodology for reducing childhood diarrhea and ensuring sustainability of water. At the same time, Water for Good was doing some of those things, but Water for Good was really getting their brand out there. Like everybody knew about them, and we were in different countries, so we could put the operations together. And the very things LifeWater needed were the things that Water for Good were working on, and vice versa. So by bringing it together, I won't lie, it's a very messy process to merge for
Oh,
sure,
yeah,
and
for
it can be
sure.
chaotic. But by bringing those two organizations together over the last 2 years, we now can look at a world where in the next 3 years we're hoping to double our impact without having to double our cost, raising our cost 40%, but being able to double our impact from 1.3 million to 2.6 million people annually.
Wow, that's amazing. I love it. And you said the sentence, we let go of lesser idols. And I know exactly what you mean by that, because listen, and I have a very good friend. He's now a top executive at Compassion International. And we were talking, he was a for-profit executive for many years. And he told me something one day that it's kind of like related to what you said. He said, there are so many ministries doing the same thing. And we often have to let go. As you said, he didn't use the lesser idols, but it's like the ego, right? Of like, I started this ministry, so and it's like, no, you merge the, the strengths of both ministries there, right? To accomplish more. And I love that because at the end of the day, this is not a organization, it's a calling. It is a calling from the Lord because this is a Christian organization. And as a matter of fact, I want to talk a little bit about this holistic approach, but also about the mission behind what you do, right? It is so huge. But before that, I want to ask you a question. I can imagine that you guys, because you're saying over 600 million people have a water issue in the world. So,
Yes.
do you ever feel overwhelmed with the magnitude of this problem?
I think that's where we have to be intentional because we have about 270 people across 7 countries, right? And we only hire people in country from that country to do the work in that country because we really want to strengthen each of the countries and work areas that we're in. But we also know that if we served 1.3 million people last year, that's a huge number, but the number of people that still need to be served is so great. And so we work intentionally to celebrate what we're able to do and not go home with this thought that, oh, there's so much more. The other thing it drives us to do is really look at how do we collaborate? It's one of our core values, but how do we really collaborate with other organizations? Because one organization isn't going to get this done. It's going to take lots of organizations. And I think iron sharpening iron, where organizations can help other organizations get stronger because we're not in competition. I was in the for-profit world for many years where you were in competition, right?
Right.
We're not in competition. We all have the same thing in mind. We want to have reliable access to water go to those 696 million people. And we want to see childhood diarrhea for kids under 5 drop precipitously. Those are two outcomes that we want to see. So how do we work together to make sure those things happen
Yeah.
is a question that we ask.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, so for someone who has never seen this work firsthand, which I have never, what does life actually look like in a community without access to clean water?
Yeah, that's great. In fact, I would encourage you, Patricia, if you ever want to go with us, I would love to have you come and see our teams. We'd love to show people the before and the after because it is transformational. And that's a word we use. We don't use it lightly, but it's a really important part of what we do because we're not just looking to bring a drink of water. We're looking to help communities transform, be transformed by God's love, be transformed economically, and people's lives to be transformed. So they're a different trajectory for kids. So when we go into a community, our average project is about 25,000 people, maybe it's 300 villages and maybe 4,000 homes. So our goal is to walk alongside that community for about a 3-year period. So we will hire a team. We may have a team of 15 to 20 people, engineers, social workers, different skill sets. They'll actually go live in the community, and they will get to know people, because we're talking about change, and not just bringing water and dropping it there, but change of habits, behavioral change, and that takes some time. So we actually will then raise up several hundred leaders in the community, because typically what's happening is you have women walking hours every day and they're getting bad water, but they know when a woman wakes up in the morning, she can't be thinking about how has God gifted me and how do I use those gifts today. She's thinking, I've got to walk 2 hours. I've got to get water. It might make my kids sick, but they'll live. You have kids, maybe the school houses 700 students, maybe 100 are in there. And so you see a really depressed, you see sick people. Clinics are dealing with waterborne disease. And so that's the environment that you go into. And sometimes you see churches that aren't really collaborating in the community. And so you see that when you go in, our teams will go in, we'll raise up several hundred leaders from the community, from church partners, schools, and we will train them. And then every one of those 4,000 homes, somebody will walk alongside. So the average person will have maybe 30, 35 homes, and they will help those homes change. So those homes are digging pit latrines, because almost everywhere we work in practices open defecation. So you can't just bring clean water without addressing the sanitation problem. Every home will build a pit latrine, they'll build a bathing station, hand washing, and they'll learn, why are these things so important? And what can we use locally to accomplish this? Because you can't necessarily go to the Kohler store and get, your toilets and things. And so it's really, what do we have locally to do this? And so each home will do that. And then we'll work with schools, health clinics, churches, every other player in the community to make sure that the whole community is practicing this. That takes about 18 months. And at the same time, we're developing an integrated water system. It's really not about dropping a well. Sometimes you're digging a well, but more often we're doing a pipe system from a cap spring. We're looking for gravity-fed things. We're working with the government of Tanzania on a water system that comes from Lake Victoria, and getting water out to more people. So we're looking at those things at the same time. And then at the end of that, you go, and almost everywhere that we have worked, there's 3 or 4 new women-owned businesses, because you take that fear and that work, and now a mom can wake up in the morning and say, wow, I'd like to start a business. And we've seen women start brick making businesses, because the whole economy steps up and they're like, hey, people aren't going to want thatched houses. They're going to want brick houses, gardens, stores. And it's really a beautiful thing to see. You see people, you see churches that are now working together from different denominations to serve the community. And my favorite is, you go to schools, you see 700 kids that are in school, and their life has changed. They're not sick every day, and they're talking about, I want to be a doctor. This is what I want to do when I come back. And so, it's a beautiful scene to see what happens when water, sanitation, and hygiene are working, basic needs are working in a community, and the level to which that community can rise after that.
It's so foreign to us, right? Here in the West, and like in middle class America, right? It's just even lower classes America, let's just be honest, right? It's so foreign to us to imagine, right, that people will have to be educated in the fact of, like, how does your sanitation affect your water? Is like, duh, for us. But for people in these areas where they were not taught, they don't come from the background of knowing, literally this holistic approach is key, right? It's not just drilling wells, because there are a lot of organizations drilling wells, but you guys go, the motto that you call is vision of a healthy village, right? So that's this approach that you guys are talking about. And I love it, because once you click in the minds of people, we were all made the same, right? So people who were not once not educated, but you are able to help them understand, then all of a sudden their creativity of businesses, I imagine even women are coming up with ways to support the whole approach of clean water with businesses. I just love that. The
Yeah,
ingenuity of the human mind once it's, when it clicks and goes like, oh my
yeah.
gosh, uh,
Yeah.
it's
No, I
awesome.
love that. And, when you think about it, every single society had these same struggles. We just, in the US, we just dealt with that several hundred years ago. And so
Drinking
everybody, and
clean
we
water.
forget exactly. So me too. So we forget that it's a natural progression. So it's really helping, particularly for us, it's rural people,
Hmm.
because you can go and see, like in Ethiopia, the cities are starting to thrive, but once you get out into the rural areas, they have less resources. So it's really just helping change that trajectory. And once you've done it, if you've done it in a sustainable way, that's kind of an underlying baseline. It just continues, and now you build
Absolutely.
upon that.
And I just love it that, again, it just builds up not only the health of a community, but dignity, right? Just
Yes.
mental health, even if you think about it, right? Once people get them empowered, like to change the lives of their children, their families, it's amazing. I love that. Now, you talk about when we think about drilling water, I've always thought infrastructure, right? So but water crisis, infrastructure is just one pillar, right, of the issue. So, what are some of the bigger challenges that you encounter outside of just infrastructure alone?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So if you look at Vision of a Healthy Village, and we label it that way because we stay focused on what this village, what this community can look like. And we help everybody who's doing the hard work for 3 years see that vision. But within Vision of a Healthy Village is really three parts. There's the water access, there's the community health, and there's the sustainability. And each one of them has its own challenges. But beyond the water access, once you've provided that, there's stories out there and articles that you can read about the number of abandoned water points in East Africa.
Hmm.
Some staggering numbers out there. Some estimate up to 60% of water points are abandoned in the first few years. And that speaks to what you said a minute ago, Patricia, that if you're just going in and dropping a well, but you're not building infrastructure and behavior change around that, it's probably going to be one of those that's abandoned. The other piece is, so when we're working with the community, they're putting together a water committee. They're collecting fees. But even beyond that, we then look at and say, well, who is the service provider? Like there's 150 water points. I just had an HVAC guy come to my house because I pretty much don't know what to do with any of that, right? So they come and they say it's going to get warm in Arkansas. So is your air conditioning? And they do preventative maintenance trips at my house. So it's similar to that model. We put together some kind of professionalized service provider group, either directly with the government or very entrepreneurial. Each setting might be a little bit different, or each country. We put together a group that's going to go visit and have a regular rotation of visiting and doing preventative maintenance on water points, so that in a world where often 60% of water points are abandoned in the first few years, we track all of our water points and we're consistently above 90%, closer to 95%
That's
of water
awesome.
points that are active. So that sustainability effort is really, really important. And it also hits on the health benefits, right? So if you reduce childhood diarrhea, but then the habits aren't embedded in the community, it might just start to rise after you leave. And
Hmm.
so, how we look at that is when we're raising up hundreds of leaders in the community and we're training and pouring into
Training.
them so that they're going to be there. Our 15 or 20 people will leave and move next door, but those hundreds of leaders will be there driving the behavior changes and making sure that those things
Yes.
are sustainable. And when we go back 2 years after we've left a program, so we do a baseline and end line, and then we do a post analysis 2 years later. Oftentimes, if childhood diarrhea was reduced 90%, that extra 10% is reduced as well. Or at least it stays where it is because It's more about us being a catalyst for that change and embedding it in that community than it is for us to be the change, right? We're not the change. We're basically a catalyst for that change. So sustainability is really important. So on the community health side and the sustainability of the water points as well. So we have, both those we take very, very seriously. Everything we do, we tie back to our outcomes of what is our reduction in childhood diarrhea? What is our percentage of water points that are flowing at any given time?
That's awesome. Well, and I want to point out to my audience, you need to go to the website, which is going to be linked in my show notes. But when he's talking about training, he's not talking about just a few hours of training. It's about 50,000 hours of education per region that this organization invests in, so that there is sustainability when they leave, because you do leave, right? You don't stay there forever. And there, which I love that. So you're not just coming and drilling wells and training the people, you're actually empowering them, making sure that they're empowered, that when you leave, they can continue the work of clean water. And of course, that and you will, again, I highly recommend you to go and visit the website to see, because there's measurable impact. 90% of reduction in disease is what you guys have tracked. What does that actually look, Doug, Dave, in real life for these communities? 90% reduction. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look, what you see that school that had capacity for 700 students before, it had 150 any given day because most of the kids are sick. And even if they are in school, if you have perpetual diarrhea, your focus is off.
Yes.
When you go back, that's everybody's in school, right? And they're dreaming big dreams, as only kids can do, right? They have capacity to dream of who God has created them to be and what they want to do. And those are the change makers in any community, in any country. And so you see that happening. If you go talk to clinics in the area, you see a major change there. Pre-intervention, most of what they dealt with was waterborne and sanitation-borne disease. Afterwards, what you see is a surge in preventative. So people with heart issues, pregnant women, like people are going for wellness checks, which they weren't doing before. It was mostly just illness checks. And so you see so the clinics are still busy, but they're looking at more futuristic. How do we prevent some of these things? How do we take care of some of these things before they're an issue? So, and like I said, the whole economy, you can see new businesses, you can see new things happening. One of my favorites is the churches working together. We always talk about this. We're interdenominational, non-denominational. And so we work with a variety of denominations. I could name a dozen. But when we go into a community, we grab all of those. So my favorite story is one recently happened in Tanzania. There were 41 churches, 14 denominations. We had one key partner, and we said, you've got to get all these churches together. And we're going to assign each of you vulnerable homes. So like a single mom, an elderly person, somebody with some sort of physical handicap, they can't dig a pit latrine. And it's amazing because you can go there and you can go to the Pentecostal church and the African inland pastor will be there. The Catholic priest will be there, and they will support each other because they're focusing more on what are the core tenets of what we believe, and let's go and reach our community. And so one of the things our team, and again, I give all the glory to God on this and the team that we have, our team, because we demand a lot from our church partners. We're like, yeah, this is what we need you to do. We need you to put teams together and dig pit latrines for these 10 homes. And so we really encourage them to do things that are hard to do, but they end up developing relationships and friendships and a new outlook on how do we serve our community more and argue about what we disagree with a little bit less.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And first of all, let's talk about the faith part of your mission, right? It is so strong. Water for Good is a faith-based organization, unapologetically Christian faith, although, like you said, you're non-denominational, and so. But let me ask you, how does your faith shape the mission of the organization in a practical way?
Hmm. No, I appreciate that question. So our faith is really, if you talk to 270 employees across the organization, it is a key driver to why the majority of our staff works here, because they look at the work we do as an expression of our faith, right? It's living out the gospel. We want to create a place where people want to ask, like, we have engineers that work, they could live in the bigger city in whatever country, Ethiopia, they could live in Addis Ababa, but they're out in the community. So they get asked often, why are you here? I ask them sometimes when I'm out, like, hey, why do you work for Water for Good? Like, you're living in a hard place, walking
Mhm.
alongside people. And almost to a person, they will tell you, this is how I'm expressing my faith, and this is how I'm sharing my faith. And oftentimes, it's one of those things where just by being a part of that community and working, they get asked about they get asked all the time by the community, why are you here? Like, you could be
Mhm.
in the big city. And they're able to share that, that it's an expression of their faith. The other thing I will tell you this is, because of our faith, we believe that we should do everything with excellence. Um,
Yes.
because we're representing Christ, right? Our faith is a part of who we are. We have two great founders, and Jim Hocking and Bill Ash. They started these organizations as an expression of their faith, right? They wanted to live out their faith in a tangible way, and they saw a need, and they started to figure out, how do we meet this need? Neither one had background necessarily in running nonprofits, but they both stepped out in faith. And I like to think that, 50 years since both those guys have started the organizations, we're still grounded in the faith that they started with our
Absolutely.
organization. And it's not like you're a new organization, so you erase it. We embrace that. We have two amazing histories that are now all part of our history, for how we look at our work. So our work has to be done with excellence because we're representing Christ. So when we talk about things like sustainability, we're really passionate. We don't want to do any work that's, we're going to get a few photo ops and leave, and then it's going to go back to the way it was. We want to be a catalyst for transformation. We
Mhm.
want people to know that God loves them. And that's why this group of people aren't in a comfortable place in Addis Ababa. They're out in a remote place working with
Yes.
communities.
That's awesome. Well, and now a question about spiritual transformation. Now you see, we talk, of course, it's very clear that there is a transformation on the whole society of whenever you implement this water and all the holistic approach that you have in the programs that you start. But have you seen like spiritual transformation follow the physical transformation, and is that something that is part of the program as well?
It's
Or
it's part of the program, but that's why we're so intentional about having strong church partnerships,
mhm.
because we want to make sure Water for Good is not the church. We're not the local church, and so we want to support what God is already doing in a community through the local churches, and we want to be a catalyst for them wherever we can.
Mhm.
So there is a lot of spiritual renewal in the communities we work. A lot of that, I like to say, we come and live our faith, and our church partners walk right alongside us. They're on our teams for that 3 year transformation. They're walking the communities with us. They're engaging churches and schools. And so we see a lot of spiritual transformation that goes right alongside. But we are doing that through empowering the church to be the
Absolutely.
church, and to be a bolder church in the areas in which they work, and to be a church that works in tangible ways. So they're right with us when we're going home to home.
Mhm.
They're right with us when we're celebrating a new water point, or something going on at the schools. And then the beautiful thing is, because we're going to leave, we're going to go next door and start working in 3 years. They're there. They're in the communities. They're maybe reestablishing their church in a new and profound way. And so they're there walking alongside those neighbors on their spiritual journey.
Yes, and I would dare say that without organizations like yours, the spiritual transformation cannot exist, because, or will more often than not exist, because if you do not meet the physical needs,
Mm.
you know, people, how can people even see God sometimes, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think, and I love it also. Jesus uses the imagery of water throughout the gospel, right? He talks about being living water. Him as the living water. He gives living water to the woman of the well. All of that's such strong significance as well. And yeah, I don't think, you cannot come and talk about Jesus if you do not help people in a very tangible way as well. You're not being the hands and feet of Jesus if you don't do that, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, let me ask you this. What has been, as a leader of this organization, what has been the hardest leadership lesson that you have had? Um, can you
That's
share
a,
some?
yeah, no, that's a great question. I have enough leadership experience in a variety of industries to tell you that I feel like probably over the course of my career, I've made most of the mistakes that any leader can make. And I feel like those are times where God has grown me the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as you learn as a leader, I think for me, it's staying curious. Uh, and because you never really arrive, I feel like life for all of us is a journey where we get to know God in a deeper, more meaningful way. And we get to know how God has equipped us in a deeper, more meaningful way. And so part of that is through making mistakes, or part of that is through just saying, hey, I don't know this answer. Let's go discover. Let's figure it out. So we work in 7 countries, right? So even like cultural differences, where we have to say, okay, this is how this country, and it's not just the US versus everyone else. It's like Ethiopia and Uganda. When those folks interact, what might be some of the gaps that happen that we just don't know about? It's like trying to uncover blind spots in your leadership so that you can have more effective communication. So there's less things blocking the communication because there's some cultural thing that's getting in the way. So we do a lot of work on that and a lot of really transparent, open conversations. Our chief operating officer is from our Center of Excellence in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. All of our technical people are in Addis Ababa or Uganda. And
Mm-hmm.
so like sometimes it's just starting with conversations like, hey, Zerhun, I don't know how would I do that in an Ethiopia setting? Or he may say, hey, Dave, like in a US setting, what would be the most effective way to do that? So I think that's where sometimes the mistakes are initially made. Like, hey, I said that, but it didn't seem to click. What did I do
Mm-hmm.
wrong? Give me some
Yeah.
feedback. And I think just trying to foster that culture of curiosity, that's one of our core values. And I love that one because
Love that.
it means that there's a sense of humility with it. Like no matter how our VHV is a great program, but curiosity means there's new things happening all the time, and there's ways for us to continually improve that program. And I think the same thing applies with our leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want any of our leaders here, myself included, to ever feel like, oh, we've arrived. No, because we are still growing, maturing in Christ, maturing in our understanding of the world around us. And so it's just fostering that culture of curiosity at the organization.
Well, Dave, one question about the future, because I do know that the water issue is so big, right? And so, like, what would it look like actually if we could end water poverty in the world?
Wow, that would be a beautiful day. Honestly, as an organization, we would love to put ourselves out of business. We could find other good things to do and ways to help and enrich people's lives. Um, it is moving ever so slowly. It is moving though. When I started 7 years ago, I think the number was closer to 800 million. When
Wow.
our founders started, it was well over a billion people. So it's moving, albeit slower than any of us would like. But I think a world, if you take out your basic needs, water, food, shelter, like you can't think of anything else if you've got those underlying needs, right? Like I said, the
Mhm.
mom who wakes up, she can't think, uh, what talents and skills and passions has God given me, and how am I gonna utilize those? That's a beautiful thing. God created us for that. That's
Mhm.
flourishing, right? It's figuring out who He created us to be and how do we deploy those things in the world. When you don't have water, you can't think about that. You can't flourish in who God has made you because your sole thing is, I've got to get water or my kids won't make it. And same with kids. When you are drinking bad water and you have, I mean, we talk about diarrhea, we talk about poop, we talk about all that, right? Because if you're a kid, you're drinking bad water, you can't even be focusing on learning because you've got to think about perpetual
That's
diarrhea, like
right.
constantly, right? You're sick all the time, levels of sick. And so, yeah, a world without that means that you have women who are thriving and who God made them to be. You have kids who are dreaming big dreams about being doctors, being future leaders, the changes they want to make in the world. And I think it's a beautiful thing. You have economies that are flourishing. So
Absolutely.
you have families that flourish, churches that flourish
Yeah, it's such a
when you have
big.
safe water.
It's just a ripple effect, right? Of
Mhm.
absolutely. And well, with that in mind, Dave, what are you believing God for the next 5, 10 years within this organization?
Well, we are believing God in, we just put a plan together where we are over the next 3 years wanting to go from serving 1.3 million people to 2.6 million people. So we're taking all that we've learned pre-merger on how we deploy systems, how we create capacity in our countries, how we empower people, and how we democratize data. So we worked on that, we merged, we brought all these assets together. So now we're looking at that and saying, okay, because we've done all that, we believe that God is leading us to serve 2.6 million people a year instead of 1.3. And so we're creating a path to get there and to do it without having to double our revenue. To be able to do
Hmm.
that with a 40% increase in our revenue, we're really, really excited about that. So that's the next 3 years. And then after that, it would be to continue to say, hey, our cost per person, we're creating efficiencies and being good stewards will continue to drop so that we can then expand and serve more people again without having to necessarily double revenue each time. So that's where we think, and I think of like 2.6 million. It's a big number. So for me, I always bring it down to I get to meet families, I get to meet kids, so it's a young girl that's in school and she's leading the water sanitation hygiene club, and she's dreaming big dreams, right? So it's easy to say get caught up in the numbers, but that's 2.6 million stories, people
Yes.
that created in the image of God who are going to have a new trajectory in life. And so that gets me super excited, and us as an organization as well.
Yes, and it's one story at a time, one village at a time, one, like you said, one person at a time, right? That you're
Yeah.
doing. It's a tall water order. It's a tall order, but I know that with God's behind you, which we know that He is, you can do it. And I'm so thankful to have met you and know a little bit more about this wonderful organization. And now, as we get to the end of our conversation, Dave, for someone that's listening today, like what is just one simple way that they can be part of this mission?
Yeah, I would say, and I know you're going to share this, but visit waterforgood.org. Um, there's a very small investment goes a long way to either providing water for someone as little as $5 a month to actually then making sure it's sustainable, which is only several dollars a year. Ultimately, once you've got the services, so there's many ways at every level people can get involved. They can see the communities and the projects and things we're working on, praying for our teams. Our teams are out there on the front lines. Again, they're in tough places. And so that's what I would consider. I'm happy to have any of you connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you have any questions, reach out to me. Would love to tell you more about the work that we're doing and about the amazing teams we have doing it.
That's wonderful. Well, I may take you up on that offer to take me to one of these fields and look. Maybe I'll write a book about it.
I think that would be wonderful, Patricia.
Oh, wonderful, Dave. This has been a wonderful conversation and really life-giving. And I hope that my little contribution will bring some awareness in the community about your organization. I had not heard about Water for Good before, and I'm very glad that I did. And for you who are listening, just go to my show notes and connect with this organization. Listen, as he was talking, I was just thinking, I went to my refrigerator and I feel this huge, huge mug over here with clean, filtered water. And we take for granted, how incredible. I'm one of those people that I get thirsty really easy. And I can't imagine not to be able to just fill up a mug and drink water all day. And we just cannot forget the importance of water. Jesus is our living water. And we need him, but we certainly need water too. So I love what you are doing. God bless you and all your efforts. And I know that 4 years from now, we may be having this conversation and you have reached over 2 million, maybe 3-4 million with clean water. Thank you so much, Dave, and God bless you.
Thank you, Patricia.